Welcome everyone to the Red Raider Report. I'm Zach Long alongside Don Williams. We're here right outside Jones AT&T Stadium, otherwise known as Raiderville, for the second consecutive week. Students are camping out behind us, getting ready for the big game. Oklahoma State, the number 9 team in the country, comes in to face the second-ranked Texas Tech Red Raiders. And Don, you look at this game. Last week we called Texas the big one, the biggest game in school history. On and on and on. Well, they won that game. Now you get to call this one the biggest game in school history because essentially every game is big from this point on.
Yeah, I mean, you dispense with number 1, and now this week you get the matchup of number 2 Texas Tech versus number 9 Oklahoma State. Cowboys, fantastic offensive football team, and I think kind of like Texas Tech, they're a better defensive team this year than they have been in the past. One of the notes that always comes up when Oklahoma State comes to Lubbock is that the Cowboys haven't won here since 1944, and no more important time for Tech to maintain that streak than this weekend.
Right, you talk about last week during the press conferences, the team seemed extremely calm, not really distracted by the luster of the big matchup, and now that they're the number 2 team in the BCS, they essentially control their own destiny. What's their mood like this week? Is it more the same?
Yeah, I think it is. I can't detect. Of course, practices are closed, but when you see guys coming off the field and just hanging out in the football training facility, they don't seem really any different than they have been, back in September, back in August. I think reason for that, one of the reasons, is you have a whole bunch of guys on this team who have played a lot of college football.
Right.
Some pretty good senior type talent, a lot of juniors, a bunch of players who this is not their first time to play a big game. For virtually all of these guys, they had a huge game. They had huge games at the end of last season when they hosted Oklahoma here when OU was number 3, when they were playing for it to get into the Gator Bowl, and then, of course, in the Gator Bowl when you're playing on New Year's Day for the first time in more than 50 years.
Right.
Gave a good account of themselves, against OU here. Second half of the Gator Bowl, pretty much the entire game against the University of Texas, and so I think they view it as cliche to say just another football game,
right.
But I think they have shown in the past that they know how to manage these situations and how to get ready for games like this.
Okay, and I know you're not a big fan of judging, comparing other games and other scores, but you look at Oklahoma State, Texas, an outstanding game in Austin. Texas pulls that out. And now you got to look at this coming in. Oklahoma State has a lot to gain by winning this football game. Is Oklahoma State almost a tougher opponent for Texas Tech than Texas was?
I think absolutely they are when you consider that, from the standpoint of this, and that is that Oklahoma State offensively is going to challenge Tech's defense. Unlike Texas defenses have been challenged all season. Texas is a real good offensive football team, but Oklahoma State's running game is vastly superior in my mind to what
right.
Texas was. And it's nothing new because for several years now, Oklahoma State, they've run a very balanced, almost kind of a pro-style offense in which they involve all their skill position players. The top 3 guys on the depth chart at running back, Kendall Hunter, Keith Toston, Bo Johnson, those guys have combined, you add up their numbers, 2,088 yards rushing and 22 touchdowns. At quarterback, I don't think Zach Robinson is as good as Colt McCoy, but Zach Robinson's a real good quarterback. He's more than capable of winning big football games for you. And then at wide receiver, Des Bryant is the closest thing to Mike Crabtree that you're going to see in the Big 12. And this is obviously this conference is loaded with good receivers. When you talk about Jeremy Maclin at Missouri, when you talk about Jordan Shipley and the kind of year that he's having at Texas, and Quan Cosby, and on and on. The kid at Kansas State. There's a whole bunch of good receivers in this conference. But
right.
As far as just freakish individual talent, I think the closest one to Mike Crabtree is Des Bryant from Oklahoma State. He's about the same size, and he's the kind of guy that Daniel
right.
Charbonnet said this week, they just throw it up to him, and he goes and gets it. And then you look at tight end, they have Brandon Pettigrew. He's the guy who caught the winning touchdown pass in the Tech OSU game last year. He's going to be a high NFL draft choice for sure first day, possibly, he could be a first-round NFL draft pick. It just kind of depends on how quickly teams want to start drafting tight ends come April.
Right.
So from that standpoint, I think Oklahoma State proved a lot a couple of weeks ago when they went to Austin and played the Longhorns right down to the wire, 28-24 football game.
And with that plethora of talent, you talk about Des Bryant, who is, will absolutely murder you on the long ball. They killed Iowa State last week with long touchdown passes.
And he's a challenge for the special teams too, because he's returned 2 punts for touchdowns this year.
Right. And with that talent, Don, what do you see as the key matchup in this game between Tech and Oklahoma State?
I think Tech has to stop the running game. Key matchup for this one is number 5 rushing offense in the nation, which is Oklahoma State. Number 10 rushing defense in the nation, which is Texas Tech. Red Raiders this year vastly improved against the run. The only time that they've given up really big yardage against the run was out at Nevada in the first or second game of the season. Nevada, and that didn't necessarily surprise me. Nevada's a really good offensive football team with that option game.
Right.
And you look at it now, 9 games in, as we look in November, Nevada's the number 2 rushing offense in the country. They got 224 against the Red Raiders. Oklahoma State is right there behind them at number 5. It's very important that Tech is able to, on first down, hold Kendall Hunter or whoever's in the game at that point to 3 yards or no more than 4 yards, because if Oklahoma State gets into situations where they're 2nd and 5 or less, or where they're 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 1, then they can they can do anything that's in their playbook. They can hand it off. They can play action pass, go deep
right.
to Bryant. They can play action pass, go to Pettigrew, the tight end. It's going to be extremely important that Tech holds this team to that they're in 2nd and 8 and 3rd and 7,
right.
so that they can go with the defensive packages. And again, for the most part, they've been able to do that this year. Nebraska was about the only team in Big 12 conference play that got Tech out of what it likes to do defensively.
Okay, and Don, Texas Tech number 2 in the BCS standings. They are essentially in the national championship game if they just keep winning football games. This is a big one, Oklahoma State. Does Texas Tech get it done against this talented football team?
I think they do, and I think the reason why is this is a game where you pick the home team. The talent level on both sides is very comparable, very similar. If we were packing up to go to Stillwater this weekend, I'd say it's a game that you take the Cowboys. But since you're playing on Saturday night in Jones Stadium, and the fact that Tech beat a number 1 team in the country in this environment last week, the fact that
right.
they beat the number 3 team in the country in this environment at the tail end of the regular season last year, I think you pick Tech on Saturday night.
Okay, before we close out this segment, Don, I want to get your opinion. Earlier today, several media outlets reported Kansas State head coach Ron Prince has resigned, after kind of a rough 3-year period there. Is this a surprise move for you, or is this something that you kind of saw coming?
We had heard rumblings out of Manhattan, Kansas, back even before Texas Tech went up there this year, that Ron Prince was on the hot seat and he better get things turned around quickly, or that was going to be the end. And I don't know if it had already been decided before Wednesday of this week, but if it had not, certainly I think nail in the coffin was getting hammered by Kansas, particularly after Kansas had looked really bad the week before against Texas Tech. It's kind of a unfortunate thing that it hits home here at Texas Tech, because Ruffin McNeil was offered a position on Ron Prince's staff. Ruffin knows Ron Prince all the way back from when they were together at Appalachian State, when Ruffin McNeil was the linebackers coach there, and when Ron Prince was an offensive lineman, and so they're close friends, and I'm sure that hits Ruffin McNeil hard today.
Okay, that's going to close out Don and I's segment. We're going to be right back with Adam Zuvanich. We're going to take a little bit more in-depth look at the Oklahoma State Cowboys right here from Raiderville at Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock, Texas. You're on the Red Raider Report.